How to validate NCR missing parts files. The requirement is to validate NCR claims investigations with the aim of presenting an accurate liability and credit amount to TVS Divisional Management, and we'll need Excel, Trace, Outlook and VA to complete this task. Here's an example of a claims email from the customer NCR, and within this email will be attachments of claims forms, which we'll look at next. The claims form will include the date, the country of submission, the trace request number, the part number, and the claim value. So here is a claims file sent by the NCR team in India and then validated by John Smith currently as of May 2023. Now, the file itself is color coded, where we have green, we have claim status declined. That means that the team has already been able to locate the part, probably by checking trace scans. We have color code blue, which means that the part has been found in distress. And then we have color code orange, which means that it is pending further investigation. If we drill a little bit deeper into the components of the file, we have the claim reference number, which will have been submitted on the claims email by the customer, the outbound trace request number, additional information such as C references on a return, or perhaps an R number if it is a return in transit. Then you have the trace status, comp ready ACK, etc., link return, link replen, NCR trace invoice number or Oracle invoice number starting with 30, the service type, the liability value. That is limited to £50 for this file where we have a blue or orange status, because we have a maximum claims value of £50 for the customer. We have the claim status here, which is declined, pending, in distress, or pending, and then some additional columns with comments. The status, is it declined, is it in distress, is it waiting to be added to stock, etc. Last scanned at, so no scan, CCW hub, in night, Dublin, so anywhere where the part was last scanned, we'll log that there. We have the divisional owner, generally that is either the hub, large sheds, in night, Ireland, or the warehouse. The claim type, the claims reference number, which I think we've already got, the claim date, the total value, that's not including the £50 liability, currency, dates, descriptions, week numbers, months, and importantly the divisional head, that's an important one, and the country of the claim, because this file should also be used for Europe. So that is a brief introduction into how that claims investigation file, which is driven by the NCR email and claims forms, is composed. We'll next go to a claims validation investigation step. So now let's try to investigate one of the pending items on the claims file. So if we take the request number in column B from one of the orange rows, and we move to Rico Trace, and we input the request number, like so, then we can pull out the request details. We can see this return item, con return, from September 2022 was last loaded to a distress pallet. So if we enter the distress ticket, you'll be taken to the distress tool, and we can see here that this item was actually scrapped at the request of NCR, and as a result the claim is invalid. So we can go back to our file, we can mark this in green, and we can change the liability to 0. We can change the claim status to declined. We can say take the comment from the distress tool, and input that into, oops, let's do that again. We can input that into the comments section. We can say declined, and that should be enough because we've now marked that as 0. I'd like to do the same for the other liability values in green, change those to 0, so we know for that monthly figure at the moment for May 2022 as per this file. If we just remove all of the applied filters here, and you can see there's some others here, look, which is good. So if we just filter by 0, then again, this is just the RICO liability value, it's not the full value. We can see that our liability is now down to £700 for that month. So here we are again. Next investigation row, we're going to take this request number out and we're going to have a look on the control panel. So let's enter in the request details. Let's view the request details and glean from trace what we can about this particular return. So we know it's a com return uncollected, returned in March 2022. And if we have a look at the pallet it was sent to, or sent on, it was sent to the Minworth hub, scanned in the returns area, and there are no further scans. So this is a good different example from the last one we reviewed. And what we do with these return items is we check to see if there are any linked replen. We don't see a distress ID, we can't see a pallet scan, but we can still check for a linked replen. So we go to trace, which is where we already are, Dave, and we input the request number followed by 01, and we remove the leading spaces. We place that value into OR11, so we've got the trace return label number plus 01, and we see if there's a linked replen, which there is. So we can see a linked replen here that has not been activated. In addition, we can check reference 1 for the same value, and it brings up the same replen also in REQ. So we'll now go back to this. Actually, the linked replen's already listed there, you'll see. But what we're now going to do is we're going to mark this in red, and we're going to say we're going to and my apologies for this slight delay. We're going to say unable to locate parts. We're going to keep the liability, and we're going to make the status accepted, because as it stands we can't find that part. We would assume that all of the investigations have already been done by John and the team. This is just a final trace check to make sure that the part can't be located as our best attempts, and as a result we're going to say that this item is accepted for a claim. So let's review another row on our claims file for May, and we'll take the request number once more. We'll plug it into trace on the control panel, and we'll view the request details. So This has actually pulled the pick into sight. We don't really want to see that here, I don't think. We want to look at the outbound, or indeed the return. And in this instance, we're looking at a outbound. You can see that the return hasn't been activated, and in fact the last scan was to a manifest in Ireland with no further scans. So in terms of the work that we can do here in terms of trace analysis as part of our validation of the work that's been done by John on the desk, there isn't much more we can do at this stage, and as a result we are going to say that this item is also accepted. So we will change the status to accepted and keep that RICO liability value. Obviously there is an opportunity to go and investigate that with the divisional head. You may choose to do that, but in terms of this trace check, there's not much more we can do on this particular example. So here we are again to check another trace request on our claims file. Let's get over to the control panel, input the request details into our control panel, check the view request details, and we can see here a few more scans on this particular example, the last of those being a scan to a CCW pallet, and we also have that magical distress ticket logged within the request details. Let's click on that and we can see here that we've got a closed status on this distress ID, and the NCR has been in. They've reviewed the ticket and they've provided a new customer reference. So if we take that and we go to the control panel and we input that into our reference one, we should be able to get a replen from that. And indeed we do. And the best news is that replen is at comp status, which means that that item was scanned in. So this claim is an invalid one. So if we go back over to our spreadsheet, we can mark this color in green. We can change the liability value to 0, which is what we like to do. We can change the claim status to declined. We will, I think, keep that link replen, which was already there, which is great. And we will just say that this part was, once we go through the list, we should be able to see link replen added to stock, and we can just say scanned in on link replen. And that's a nice simple one. That's an example of what we want to find. We want to see a ticket with potentially a distress item, or by checking the link replen, and we see that that's been scanned in. So that's a good result for this particular example. Okay, so let's take our next request and check it on our trace control panel. And we can see with this example, this item from April 2022, the return was last scanned to a CCW pallet, which suggests there will be a linked replen. So if we take the request number, put that into reference 1, making sure all other fields are blanked off. And we need to make sure we're doing this check even if there is a link replen displayed in the file. And the reason we do that is because sometimes you can get more than one replen listed to the same request number. I know it sounds strange, but that is a thing that can happen. Now, on this particular example, you'll see that the link replen in OR11 with the return and 01 at the end has delivered a result, but a strange one, a replen without further scan. Another thing that we can check is the CE reference in reference 1 to understand if the part has been scanned in, perhaps with a different label, a different replen link to that CE reference. Unfortunately, it's just brought us back to the return and the first replen at AC. So I think for this example, I'm struggling to find a clear option, and as a result, we'll now have to go back to the file and mark this as a accepted item, and we shall say unable to locate parts, which we should have done on the previous one as well. So that change has been made. We'll keep the liability value in there, and we'll keep going with our investigations. Okay, so here we are again to gather another request from our file and plug it into Trace. So what can we see on this request? Well, we have a request from March 2022, less scans than perhaps we'd like to see, the last scan being a scan to a CCW pallet. Again, this would suggest that we have a linked replen. So again, rather than just going from the file, because we don't necessarily trust that all of the work that needs to be done has been done, we're going to add into reference 1 a request number. And it does bring up a link replen, but again at REQ status, so not activated, not helping us in locating this part. Let's now add the request number plus 01 of the return into OR11, see if we can gather any results from that. Fortunately, we have, interestingly, 2 requests linked to this now, both at REQ. Perhaps one final thing that we can check is this CE reference, which has been linked to one of the request numbers. Is there another replen with that CE reference that we could use to find this part? The answer is no, unfortunately. So this part, which was a return no debrief, has been scanned to the CCW but had no further scans. At this moment, I'm struggling to find this part, and unfortunately it's going to be another accepted, based on the trace analysis that we've done, unable to locate part, and we're going to keep that £50 liability. On to the next check. So while we're here, we'll take the request number and we'll input the request number. We want to remove that CE reference from the previous investigation. And interestingly, here we have an outbound which has been cancelled. Cancellation requested by NCR. That's intriguing. So actually what we may have here is a situation where the part didn't even get picked. Now that is not the case, because we can see from the stock item linked to the pick that the part was indeed scanned. So I would assume that that part probably got scanned back into stock on another request, and we might want to investigate that with the help desk before accepting the claim. So that's something that I think we should put in park until we've done that investigation. We're going to keep going, and I can see there that the comment is fairly accurate, but we'll make a mental note to go to the help desk to investigate that one. Now let's take the next request. This time we have a con next day. We can see from the notes here that it was returned on this request number. Yep, which matches the next request. And if we go here, we can see a scan to a CCW pallet, and what we want to see is a distress ID at close status. Let's take that new customer reference number once again. Let us go to the control panel. Let us populate reference 1, see if we get a replen at comp. Yes, we do. So that is, again, similar to what we had previously, a good result. We're going to mark the correct request number in green. We're going to change the liability to 0, and we're going to call this now declined. We'll populate the failure mode as link replen added to stock, and we've reduced our liability for May once again. Let's keep going. Let's take the next request number. Let's plug that into trace. So by doing this, we're just getting into the flow of how these investigations are managed. What are we looking out for? Right, here we go. We've got another return, and it's been loaded this time to a CCW palette. What a surprise. So let's take that request number. Let's go to the control panel. Let's add 01 and keep reference 1 as the field. Press submit. Do we get a replayed response? No. Now let's move to OR11 and press submit. And fantastic, we get another linked replay. This is good news. So what we can do now is mark that in green, change the liability to 0. We're going to add a decline status. We're going to say scanned in on link replayed. Let's just make sure that we do have the replayed listed here. Do we have the link replayed? Yes, we do. Perfect. And does that match our positive result? Let's just check that actually. Yes, it does. Perfect. So we've got another positive result. So that's good. Okay, so now we've completed all of our analysis. Outside of this video, I've gone away and investigated the remaining items. I've added whether they're accepted or declined, and I've changed the liability accordingly. Oh, that one isn't quite right, look. So let's just check that the value is higher than £50, which it's not actually. So always worth just highlighting that we take a £50 liability unless the value of the item is less than £50, which in that instance it is. So I have completed the investigations in a similar fashion to what we've seen previously in the video, and now all I do is I tot up the total value of our liability in column I. That figure there is the value that we would then take away, and we would perform some sort of pivot table from the here, and we would take the items in red, so we would sort by color, and then we would take the divisional heads and we would go to each with the value assigned to their divisions and ask for them to approve a credit note. Once you receive email approval of that, then we would go away and raise a credit on the credit tool. Now those are different, that is a different video, raising a credit, but I hope this has helped you in terms of investigating and validating claims analysis performed by the TVS India team and also John Smith. So I hope this video has been useful to you, and I'm sure we shall see each other again in another TVS training video very soon. Thank you.